Hi, my name is Julia. I'm the Association Coordinator with the PEI Lung Association. Welcome to today's COPD virtual support group. Our topic today is building better mental health and isolation. We know that COPD can introduce many challenges to our lives, and we wanted to have these sessions to provide an opportunity for you to learn from experts in the field, as well as to connect with others living with COPD. And learn skills to help you manage your condition. Although the PEI Lung Association is hosting we really want to be open to the kinds of presentations that you would like to receive or how you would like the group to run. So we're just the ones facilitating it, but we really want to hear from participants about what they would like to see at their sessions. So today we have Leanne Greer with us, and she's going to be giving a presentation about mental health. Just going to take one session. Oh my goodness. Sorry, everyone. I'm a little lip-looped today. Okay, great. So Dr. Leanne Greer is a psychologist at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital. She works mainly with the stroke program, inpatient rehab unit, and outpatient physical medicine departments. Her practice is a combination of clinical health and neuropsychology. She has also been fortunate to partner with the cardiac and pulmonary rehab programs in Charlottetown, Summerside, and Montague, offering sessions on managing stress. Well, it's great to have you here today. So I'm just going to switch the controls over to Leanne, and we're going to get started with our session.
Okay, you can and I think mental health has been more on the forefront than I've seen it ever before. So my hope today, except I don't have control over my screen.
Oh.
I'm not able to advance my slide.
Okay.
Remote control, no.
Sorry.
The next one. Or we could just talk and okay, well, thanks for your patience. Yeah, so my hope today really is to hit on three things. One is to talk a little bit about mental health in the context of living with COPD. Throw in a global pandemic on top of that, just to provide a little background, and then spend most of our time on what do we know can help cope with stress and with changes in mood and with changes in our mental health. What can we do to cope with it? So those are my hopes, to cover those areas in the time I have today. The other thing I've done at the end of the slideshow is I have a list of a number of different online resources that I put on the show in the hopes that if people are wanting to explore what's available online further, they can go to the recording after the fact and pull off those resources and look into them in more detail. So what we do know when you look at mental health and living with any chronic health conditions, but specifically COPD, is depression and anxiety are not at all uncommon. In fact, they're much more common than you would find in your average population of people who aren't living with any kind of chronic health condition. And as you'd expect, the more severe one's health issues, the more likely we are to find depression and anxiety. So they do go very much hand in hand. And the numbers are, I mean, quite high in some of the studies that I looked at. average population, the estimates for depression and anxiety are maybe 10 to 20% of the population at any one time might live with clinical depression or with anxiety. So these numbers, they say something about how often you are going to be experiencing it while you are living with chronic lung disease. And one of there's a lot of reasons for that. As folks know, I think one of the things that makes COPD unique relative to other chronic conditions is the symptom of breathlessness. It's not surprising at all that anxiety is going to come more frequently when you live with a condition whose primary symptom is shortness of breath. And I know people are well aware of the anxiety breathlessness cycle. I think both of the previous presentations that you've had talked about it as well. When you have shortness of breath, the natural response is to become anxious, is to become fearful if you can't catch your breath. But the problem is, of course, that one of the primary things that can make anxiety worse is shortness of breath, and anxiety creates shortness of breath. So it's very easy to get caught in a vicious cycle of anxiety and breathlessness when you live with chronic lung disease. So you've got a bit of a double whammy there. On top of which, as I said, all we have to do is throw in a global pandemic and mental health issues go up even further. I don't know specifically that any research has been done that I'm aware of anyway on just how much worse it has become for people who are living with chronic health conditions. But the estimates in the average population, in the early studies that I've seen so far, is there's been a 3- to 4-fold increase in the incidence of depression and anxiety in your overall population when surveys have been done since the start of the pandemic. So people are not alone. Right? I think that there are many, many people right now living with mental health concerns. And some of the reasons are in part the measures that we've had to put in place to keep people safe, which do unfortunately create a sense of isolation. People aren't having the same amount of social contact, and we know that loneliness contributes to depression. And when we can't spend the time with the people we're used to spending time with, if we happen to be in a position where our family or loved ones don't live within the region or the province we live in, there's much more restriction happening between ourselves and other people. There's much more risk of loneliness. The uncertainty, right? Just the change that's happened on every level of our lives impacts our well-being. And again, when you're living with a lung condition, and we're talking about COVID-19 and the risks, naturally we're going to find that our anxiety and our stress levels are going to increase in the face of this. I'm concerned, working in the hospital, one of the concerns we've also had is the drop. It's not so much, I think it's starting to level out, but especially in the first 6 months, the drop in the number of people presenting to hospital with conditions that you would expect people to be coming into emergency for. So heart attacks, strokes. We worry about the fact that people are living with health issues and afraid to come to hospital for it. So there's just so many disruptions in people's health care. All of these things are contributing to changes in our mental health, and not in a good direction. So this is the context we're living in, and we don't know for how long. What we've got to do is figure out how do we live with this? How do we live with this as well as we can until things look a little brighter. And every time they look a little brighter, there's always some new twist in the story. So we want to try to live as well as we can. So that's where I want to shift my focus here. I found this actually early in the pandemic, as you can tell by the comment about toilet paper. I think if someone was making one of these little posters now, they might add a few more things in. But when I think about how can we cope as well as we can cope with such uncertain times, it can be really helpful to divide our experience into things that I can control and things I can't. And I'll often talk about this when I'm doing stress management groups with the pulmonary rehab program as well. When we live with stress, it's really important to ask ourselves how many of the things that I'm stressing about are things that are completely out of my control. And if they're out of my control, can I recognize that and find a way to let go of those things? Because worrying about them, staying awake at night, worrying about them, trying to solve those only increase my stress. The more I can focus my energy on the things I can control, the more effective I will be at coping, the better I'm going to feel. So that's my step one. No matter what the issue is, really asking, what do I have control over? So when it comes to mental health, when I'm thinking about maintaining mental health under any circumstance, really, but certainly under the current circumstances, some of the things that we can put our focus on is, well, what control do we have over our social contacts? They may have changed, but there's still things that we can do. I call it mental engagement, just keeping ourselves engaged, keeping ourselves cognitively, keeping our brains active, keeping our bodies active. Basic self-care, looking at our mindset, our mental set, our thinking patterns, and then the ways that we calm ourselves. These 6 areas are things that if we can put our energy there and do the best that we can with what we have, there's a place that we can make some positive changes in terms of our own well-being. So thinking about the social, the first point, as I said, loneliness contributes to depression, and we have a number of things that have disrupted our social contacts. One of my own, it's almost like my beef with this notion of social distancing, however, is I feel like it conveys the wrong message. I'd really encourage us to think more in terms of physical distancing rather than social distancing. We really need to find a way to be physically distant, but maintain social connection. And so although we need to follow all of the public health guidelines, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to be socially isolated or socially distant. People have found some creative ways, most certainly, especially in the early going when we were much more restricted in our contact with other people. This group itself is a wonderful example of the creativity, things that it's almost a silver lining that's come from a terrible crisis that we're in, is we've found new ways to use social media that we may not have before. So having an online support group is phenomenal. I understand that I think the pulmonary rehab program is about to restart virtually, which I think is great. It's also a great way for people to be connected to other people living with living under similar circumstances. I've heard of people, I have a 90-year-old aunt who FaceTimes with us and is on social media all the time, and it's wonderful. Again, she was always computer literate, but it's wonderful to see the amount of contact she has. I think she has more contact with her family now than she had prior to COVID-19, once she worked the bugs out of how to FaceTime everybody. So finding ways to connect, even if it's not in person, face-to-face, is really important. There's been some interesting studies done too that show that we don't even have to have long interactions. Something as small as having a pleasant interaction with the person who is at the cash while you're buying your groceries or delivering your packages can be enough to have a positive impact on our mood. And certainly here in PEI, right now we're fortunate where we can see people in person. So finding ways to safely see the people who are important to us in person, even for short visits, goes a long way to keeping us in a more positive frame of mind. Picking up the phone and calling someone just to say hello, something that's very important. So here's something we can do rather than withdrawing into the safety of our own individual homes. Think about your opportunities to reach out to other people, and that will help with our mood. So that's part one. Right? As I said, join a support group. Everybody here knows that, and they're doing it. I think that's fantastic. Something else we can do is look at our mental engagement. As I said, distraction for the artists in the group. There's lots we can do. So a few ideas there, right? Again, we know the more mentally active we are, the better we are emotionally. And sometimes it means battling the urge to simply flip on Netflix and go for something that's a simple distraction. Nothing wrong with that at all, but we just want variety. And having a variety of activities that we can turn to can be very beneficial. So I have marveled again, not only at how many new things have emerged online since the pandemic, but I think how many things were already there, but I wasn't aware of until I started looking. They became more popular with this. I had no idea that some of the great museums of the world provide free virtual tours. So I know these are long links, which is where, if you can take a look at these in the recording, if you're curious afterwards, you'll be able to have a better chance of following these links, or you can just Google virtual museum tours. I toured the Louvre. I was curious, so I clicked, and they have wonderful, they take you through a number of different art galleries in the world where you can actually see paintings that, although you can't travel to see directly, you can see them online if that's something that interests you. We now have a number of online book clubs. A number of universities are offering free courses, and there's also general interest courses. So there's lots of things. There's audiobooks, there's podcasts, there's so many things we can do to keep ourselves distracted, engaged, follow our interests. And the more we do that, the more we have a sense of purpose. The more we have a sense of purpose, the better we feel. And sometimes we have to act first, and the motivation comes later. I know sometimes people say, oh, I know I should, but it's hard and I don't really have the energy to. And to that, what I'd really encourage people to do is to make the decision to do it anyway. And you'll find once you start into something, your motivation picks up after the fact. So sometimes we have to act first and the motivation comes later. And then we'll be glad that we did, which is kind of the same for the next one, physical activity, right? Same principle works here. If we wait till we're motivated, sometimes it doesn't happen. But if we make a commitment to ourselves to say, I'm going to do, whether it be 5 minutes of some form of activity 3 days a week, or 5 minutes 3 times a day, the motivation can come later. That's all right, but it will come. And sometimes we have to do it first. And I won't belabor physical activity again. There was a great presentation last time. Courtney and Francois did a lovely piece on the importance of physical activity, and the fact that even though you're living with COPD, you are still well able to be active. You work within your capacity, modify as needed, but the more you can do, the more you're going to be able to do. And we know the more we're able to do physically, the better we feel. and the better we feel about ourselves. If we can get outside, I'm sorry, I laughed when I saw that. I can completely sympathize with the upper photo or the upper image there. It doesn't have to be outside. Outside is great, but there are also a number of online exercise programs that people can follow. And I remember I included a link, CBC, this was very early in the pandemic. This was maybe April when this came out, but it was a great link to a variety of different free online programs available for people that you can look at, anything from yoga to more aerobic based activities. All can be done from the comfort of your living room. So the more we can be physically active, the better it is for us. Okay, so that's all I'll say about that. What else can we control? Right? If we've looked at our ability to engage with other people, engage our brains, engage our bodies, it's important to take care of ourselves, just basic self-care. No rocket science in this, but again, I found it in myself. There are times throughout these last 10, 11 months, however long it's been now, when knowing that I need to take care of these things and doing it don't always go hand in hand, and it takes a bit of effort. We really do have to avoid the urge to hibernate and not worry about what time we get up or give in to the cravings for the unhealthy food. Although those are small things, they're very basic things. And the more we can take care of these basic needs of ours, the better we feel. So if we fuel our bodies with healthy stuff, if we do manage our sleep so that we're not just going to bed whenever and getting up whenever, if we can make sure that we do wake up at a regular time and also get ready for the day, as opposed to not showering and changing and kind of facing the day as if, even if we've got nowhere to go necessarily, just that transition from being in bed to getting cleaned up can do a lot for our mood. And laughter, we can't forget laughter. It has a powerful impact on our well-being. One of the strategies that is sometimes used in treatment of people with mild depression, if they're struggling with shifts in their mood, we'll call it acting opposite. And we will encourage people to do the exact opposite of what their depression tells them to do. So when depression tells a person to go back to bed and hibernate, basically pull the covers over their head, we might say, or when the sadness comes over, we might encourage people to do the opposite, get out or laugh. So turn on a comedy. I remember I had a lady I worked with once who came into one of our sessions and was so proud of herself. She said she was having a really bad day. She said, I put on one of those Netflix comedy specials, and she said, I forced myself to watch it until I finally laughed. She finally laughed. We can shift our mindset. We don't have to be caught in the trap of, I feel low and I'm going to pull myself in. There's lots of ways to shift that up if we grab control over it. So never underestimate the power of laughter. Our mindset is something else we can put some energy into as well. So by mindset, there's a few things I'm referring to here. If I'm feeling low or I'm feeling anxious, the last thing I want to hear is, "Oh, cheer up," or just relax. Right? I can't necessarily change my mood state by just talking myself out of it or feeling differently. But I can pay attention to my mood state and try to address the things that are contributing to it. So what I mean by that is our moods, our emotions are tied very much to our thoughts and to our actions, and they interact. So if I am feeling depressed, I'm thinking negative thoughts. I'm thinking, oh, that's what I tried to get rid of. Sorry, folks. If I'm feeling depressed, my thoughts are going to be negative. My thoughts are going to be pessimistic. I'm not going to be feeling very good about myself or about the world. And my actions are going to reflect that as well. So we get into a feedback loop where how I'm feeling, how I'm thinking, and how I'm acting are all very consistent. By the same token, if I'm in a really good mood, right, I tend to be thinking much more optimistically. I'll be thinking about happy things. I'll be feeling more positive about myself and my life, and I'll be acting accordingly. So we're very consistent that way, that our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions all fit together, which also gives us a way in to change negative moods. And same with anxious moods. I'm referring to depression, but the same works if I'm feeling very anxious. Although I can't necessarily target my mood, my emotion, and just say I'm going to change that, I can target the way I'm thinking or how I'm acting. So that acting opposite that I mentioned a couple minutes ago is part of that. If I change my action, I'm starting to shift that feedback, which can help change my mood. I can do the same thing with my thinking patterns. So if I notice that I am thinking in a very negative manner, I can catch that. And psychologists will call that cognitive restructuring. It's something we may use in a therapy setting, but it's certainly something people can also use with themselves, enough to ask and cognitive restructuring, I mean, changing the way you're thinking is really what that's saying. So pay attention to what I'm thinking. Is this something I would ever say to a close friend or someone I cared about? And if I wouldn't say it to them, maybe there's something I can do about what would I say to them instead? That's how I should be talking to myself. What would I say to them? If I heard them saying that to me, what would I say back? What advice would I give them? We're far better at giving advice to other people than we are at taking our own advice. But it can be a path in to catch our own thought patterns and ask ourselves, why am I any different? We can check our facts. If we're caught in a very negative state where we're in that point where we believe that things are never going to get better, or things are always going to be going wrong, we can catch and say, well, what's the evidence for this? Is this really a fact, or am I starting to color my perceptions with a bit of a dark frame? And if that's the case, that gives me some ground to start shifting it. Because thoughts aren't facts, right? Thoughts are just thoughts. They're just events in our head that tend to reflect our mood. So we can't believe everything that we're saying to ourselves as if it's a fact. We can check our facts. If it turns out that what I'm saying, has evidence for it, okay. But if I'm speaking to myself in a pretty negative manner, then I want to catch myself. That's not fair. I don't deserve to be talked to that way. What would be a more accurate way of framing my reality right now? This is where, as I'm doing this, and I'm doing it sort of just looking at my presentation, please, if people have any questions at all afterwards, I'd be happy to talk more about this. This is just sort of a broad overview of things that you might want to consider when looking at how do I deal. Sticking to the focus on mindset, on what can I do with my mindset, something that has become more popular and has a very solid, has some very solid evidence behind it, is something called gratitude journaling. And what that involves is 3 times a week. Interestingly, any more than 3 times a week doesn't necessarily show that it's any better. So it's not something you even want to do every day. It's kind of like counting your blessings. And it has been shown to improve our well-being and reduce stress levels. And the idea behind gratitude journaling is, again, if we're under stress, if our mood is sinking, what's happened is our thinking has become narrowed. It's become a little more focused on the negative. So what gratitude journaling can do for us is it can help us broaden our perspective to remember the bigger picture, that there's more than just the negative. And it means sitting down, pen and paper, and writing anywhere from 1 to 5 things that you're grateful for. We do know that the more you can actually elaborate on what it is you're grateful for, as opposed to just point form, I'm grateful for my family, I'm grateful for the food on my table, as opposed to just making it quick point form, spending some time exploring what is it about this that makes me grateful, that makes me appreciate it, is more effective. And there are, again, all you have to do, there are gratitude journal apps for smartphones. There's websites with guides to how, if someone wants to start a practice of journaling appreciation or journaling gratitude, how to do it. But I just threw a few points out here just to give you some ideas of things you might want to do. If you wanted to start a gratitude journal, and maybe you sit down and think about a time when, someone did something nice for you, or you were able to do something for someone else, and write about that. It can be a photo, right? A memory, thinking back on that. It can be a mistake that you made, but you learned something from. So what are you grateful for from that experience? Any opportunity to think about a time or a thing or an event that you appreciate. It can be a characteristic of yourself or of someone you know. Just a few ideas on things you could pick. And if you make a commitment to sit down, as I said, maybe 3 times a week, make a few notes on something you're grateful for, try it. Try it for a few weeks and see if you notice a difference. As well as thoughts of gratitude, there's also acts that we can do, small acts of kindness, so to speak. It doesn't have to be anything major, but we tend to feel better when we do for others. So it could be as simple as writing a thank you card or calling someone to let them know how much you appreciate them. Just doing something kind or something unexpected has a way of feeding back. Not only does it make the other person feel good, but it also makes us feel good. So these are things we can do regardless of where we are, how we're living, whether we're in our house or whether we're getting out. There are still ways to express kindness or express gratitude, and benefits us, benefits other people. These were a couple examples. I'm not sure if you can see them. I came across them and I thought, that's sweet. So the first one was someone's windshield. Someone had put money in their meter and just let them know, or someone had left money in a vending machine. Just little acts of kindness. Didn't take much, maybe took a quarter or $1, but maybe made somebody's day. Couldn't resist this anyway. We can hope someday. Okay, final, I think how am I doing? I'm okay for time. The final area that I wanted to spend a little time talking about is our ability to relax ourselves. We are living in a time where our stress levels are higher than normal. And 2 of the most common approaches that are out there that can help us calm ourselves, mindfulness meditation or guided relaxation. And they're not the same thing. They can achieve the same effects sometimes, but they're 2 different things. Meditation is more work, probably would be one way to put it. It takes more practice. And it's really about helping yourself stay in the here and now. stay in control of where our mind is going, and be able to tolerate whatever we're experiencing at the time. Meditation is very effective in managing stress. It's an effective approach to managing chronic pain. There are often mindfulness meditation approaches to pain management. So again, it doesn't take pain away, but it helps people learn to be with and tolerate the pain that they're in. Relaxation, on the other hand, is specifically designed to calm the nervous system, to calm that fight or flight reaction that can be happening in our nervous system. What we know is, regardless of whether a person is engaging in meditation, whether they're doing guided relaxation, is if you hook people up to monitors while they are practicing these things, blood pressure drops, heart rate slows, breathing becomes more regulated. And actually, there have been studies shown that there's actually changes in the brain. So fMRIs have been done. People have been put in functional MRI studies while meditating. And the blood flow in the brain activity is actually different while a person is actively meditating. So their lizard brain calms down, you know, the amygdala, the fight or flight tends to calm down. The frontal lobes, which are more the calming in charge parts of the brain, tend to be more active. So it's something we can do that also just helps us get through. And just an aside, I know pursed lip breathing is something that's been talked about, and hopefully it's familiar to everybody right now on this call. We often think about pursed lip breathing as something that helps us with exercise tolerance or shortness of breath, symptom exacerbation, right, opening up the airways. It's also a relaxation exercise, or it can be used as a relaxation exercise, though. So it's to use the metaphor that I was taught with it. It's a matter of sort of inhaling through your nose for a count of 2, and then breathing out gently through pursed lips for a count of 4. Imagining, for instance, that you're smelling a rose on the inhale and just trying to flicker candles, not blow them out, but just flicker candles on the exhale. When people engage in pursed lip breathing, just sitting in their armchair, it doesn't have to be before you're about to go on a treadmill or when dealing with any other shortness of breath, but simply doing 5 minutes of pursed lip breathing can bring about a relaxation response in our brains and in our bodies. So that in itself can reduce your stress level. So it's something to keep in mind. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. It can be as simple as doing what you do anyway. But you can use this for relaxation. There's a number of things actually that people can use for relaxation. And again, I've got some resources ones that I've used more frequently, but there are so many. You simply have to Google relaxation on the internet and you will find more exercises than you know what to do with. A lot of people like guided imagery types of relaxation. So that's where you may, if you're on YouTube, you may see a scene of a beach and someone talks you through imagining yourself on a relaxing beach. And people have pretty powerful imaginations, and we can use them to relax ourselves. So without having to go anywhere or really do anything more than click on a website, if people are finding stress levels are high, I'd really encourage relaxation exercises. Just listening, all you got to do is listen along, and they may be 10 minutes long, not very long, but can be very, very beneficial. The next few pages, just wrapping up here, the next few pages of this presentation, what I've tried to do is pull together resources that people might find helpful on the internet. I'm working from the assumption that we've got some internet capacity based on the fact that this is a Zoom session. Again, I talked about sort of silver linings from this pandemic. One thing I found was there are more online mental health resources now than ever before. and they're free. So in PEI, there are two that we have access to. The first two that I have listed here, the one that's ICAN, strongestfamilies.com/ICAN, and the second one, which is Bounce Back, which is through Canadian Mental Health Association. Both of those programs are designed, the first one is anxiety. The ICAN is an anxiety management program. The second one is mental health. It hits on a variety of different mental health issues. And it involves both online education as well as one-on-one coaching. And I'm not sure if it's internet or whether it's telephone, but you actually have a human being coaching you through the material. So they're quite powerful. They're quite effective tools that are available to anybody. Bridge the Gap has more information. And then the second section are more just self-help materials. There's a lovely ebook on coping with COVID that New Harbinger put out. That's the bottom resource there. I'd encourage people just to take a look at any of these things if they're interested in more about their mental health. There's mental health apps for smartphones, so I've got a link for that. There's a professor at Dal who has created a website called My Sleep Well, designed for people with sleep issues. And if we're at a point where anyone feels like they really do need one-on-one mental health intervention, I've included the phone numbers and the link for mental health, either community mental health or the community mental health walk-in clinics that don't require prior appointments, but there's information on when they are happening. And finally, specific to COPD, there's three sites that I strongly recommend. Living Well with COPD has an excellent module. They have a number of modules that are excellent, but there's one on managing stress and anxiety that's really good. And in the UK, King's Hospital has a program that put out a PDF booklet on breathlessness and anxiety, specifically, again, how to manage symptoms of breathlessness, and very good. And COPD Foundation just has a nice information package on coronavirus and living with COPD, all of which can be really beneficial. So as people are looking for things to search on the internet, I thought I'd provide a few things that you might find helpful to help with your mental health as well. And I think that pretty much wraps up what I wanted to say today. So thank you. Hopefully this can give you some direction anyway.